we did a gauge swatch. Now we need to measure that gauge swatch, and we need to talk about how to interpret the pattern so that we can knit it on the machine if you're a machine knitter, and by hand if you're hand knitting. So I did my gauge swatch. I cheated. Do as I say, not as I do, right? I did not wash this gauge swatch and treat it as if I were knitting it, or I mean wearing it. What I just did was take the rolled up swatch and pull, and I felt the give of the stitches settling into their shape. That means that it's going to be longer on the body. It is going to stretch. I probably should have washed and dried, washed and line dried, lay flat the swatch, but I didn't. So that means I'm not going to be able to wash and lay flat my garment without expecting changes. The good thing is this stitch has a lot of give. So I'm gonna just go for it. If it doesn't fit me, it'll fit one of my girls. That's what I do. Kind of wing it a little bit. I have the flexibility of doing that. So when I was knitting my gauge swatch, I don't know if you do this trick, but I put holes. So this bottom one is tension 6, and this top one has 7 holes. It's tension 7. I did a no-no as well, and I only gauge swatched stockinette stitch. I did not gauge swatch the garter band. My tension that I gauge swatch was tension 6 and tension 7, and then on the mast, tension 1. Let me show you, because there's been questions about the mast. So I'm going to switch to the other camera and show you. Okay, so here is my my setup, and this is, I'm going to turn the camera. Oh, I can't lose the computer. Don't lose the computer, right? Okay, so here, if you look at the mini camera there, you can see the tension mast. When you put your yarn in, make sure that the yarn goes between the metal shaft and the pin. Okay, then thread it through the rabbit ears like this. This yarn here needs to stay parallel when it's resting. If it bends down like this, your tension is too tight. Sorry, you got the light in the background. If it hops up, your tension is too loose. If your yarn threads through and just pulls through without the bunny ears coming down. Let me move this light. How's that? Is that any better? If this creeps up, your tension is too loose. You want it to stay resting parallel the yarn here. So it's a little bit off because of the angle of my camera. But this right here is parallel to the table. Perpendicular to the table. Parallel would be this way. Perpendicular. Anyways, straight across. And then as you knit the row, the yarn pulls through without any So I don't know if you can see this coming out, pulling through. If it's too, so that, see how that popped up? Too loose. A 1 is tight, but it's not too tight. My yarn pulls through just fine. So if your yarn doesn't pull through just fine, then you need to loosen that up. I tend to leave it on a 1 pretty much all the time. I'm gonna pause and say hello. Hi, Diane. I can't see if you are here or not, because when I'm screen sharing, I can't see the chat. Hold on, let me see if I can see the chat. There we are. So Diane, I am recording, but say hi. If you can see in the chat, if you can see my screen, okay. I just recorded a little bit about the tension and the tension mast and how things need to be, needs to be. So if you can come back and just watch that first couple of minutes later, then you'll see a little bit, you'll see that. Okay, so I'm gonna stop my screen share and come back to my full screen. And I wanted to talk about the pattern. I wanted to show you about, well, okay, the next step after doing your gauge swatch is measuring your gauge swatch. So I'm going to show you how I measure my gauge swatch. Let me switch screens again so that you can see from the top. Okay, what I do to measure, so we have this handy dandy yellow ruler. I have no clue how it works. I have never used it. I know I probably should use it, but I have never used it. Instead, I rely on my handy dandy ruler, which I must have taken somewhere else. It's not here. Hold on. Let me go grab it from my knitting table. I'm still coming. Here I come. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. I just use a plastic ruler, which is not the most accurate, but it works. So I have 2 gauge swatches here. This first one has 6 holes, that's 6 stitches to the inch. And I typically lay this flat on a table, not on the machine, on a table. I line up the 4 and I count across. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 17 stitches equals 4 inches on a tension 6. That is not the tension I measured earlier today. I measured right on gauge this morning. The gauge is 20 stitches and 28 rows. So when I got here, I wound this up and I gave it a tug and I felt those stitches settle. This gauge on the 6 is going to be most accurate because the length and the drape. So let me just, out of curiosity, count the rows. So I line this up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 rows. $16 stitches and 23 rows. That is not close enough to gauge for me to knit this. I don't want to be reinventing the wheel. The gauge is supposed to be 20 stitches and 28 rows. So I'm going to re-swatch this on a size 5 and a size 4. But let's go ahead and continue talking because we have a few minutes. I'm going to talk about modifying the pattern. So let me stop the share here and bring you over so that you can see my board. Let me change the lighting. That didn't work. Hold on, one more light to disconnect. I want to disconnect the wrong thing here. Okay, so the light you're seeing is actually the light from my overhead light. I dropped my camera. Okay. So, is that any better? It's backwards. Hold on. Hold on. Well, it said mirror my video. I don't want to mirror the video. How is that? Can you see that? Same thing. Dang. I can fix that, but in editing, I can't fix it right now. So we're going to do a lesson here with the writing backwards. What I want you to do is pull out your pattern. If you don't have your pattern, hopefully you can follow along. This is for machine knitters. Hand knitters, you can just follow the pattern. Machine knitters, you need to know what the stitches are, the garter stitch. And I'm going to be doing a separate demo of these garter stitches so that you know you can practice and decide which way you want to do it. You have the same color. One ball is A and one ball is B, and that's to make a distinct stripe. Your pattern stitch is with color A, rows 1 through 6, knit every row on the machine that's stockinette stitch. Change to color B, knit 1 row, and then row 8 is your garter row, if you're doing it by hand, you knit that row and then convert it. So the second row of the color change is the one that produces the color ridge on the right side. That's the pattern stitch. With the body, that first 2 inches is all garter stitch. I'm going to hand knit that. I'm not going to do that on the machine. Also, you can see the stitches, the number of stitches are for in the round. We're knitting a front and a back. So you're going to divide those stitches in half and add 2 edge stitches. Those 2 edge stitches are for the seaming. So if you look at the setup round, it says purl 24, purl 28. That is half of the back and half of the front garter stitches. You are going to split that number in half for the front and the back. So that's going to be, I'm doing the largest size. I'm going to have 14, 113, and 14, plus 1 stitch for each edge, plus 1, plus 1. So once you have cast it on, so this is, I'm casting on 141 plus 2. So 143 stitches. With A, I knit 1 row. With A, I knit another row, and then I convert 14 stitches on this edge, 14 stitches on this edge, but I leave 1 stitch on each edge unconverted. That's my stockinette stitch edge that I'm going to use for seaming. Then rows 1 and 2 are done twice. So I knit 2 rows, convert the edge, knit 2 rows, convert the edge, change to B round 7. So change color. So you can keep these 2 colors in your, 1 in each feeder. And then with B, I knit 1 row, and with, then I purl a row. So I'm going to knit the row and convert the whole row and repeat those rounds once more. Then it's a decrease row. So we go back to A and we repeat. They just tell you to knit the row and then you're in the round on the pattern. So purl to the marker, when in actuality you're going to knit the row and convert the 14 stitches, and then it says slip the marker. We're not putting markers in, so you can make some kind of a mark on your machine to show you where that 14 is, but the decrease, row 3, says knit 1 SSK, knit to 3 stitches before the marker, knit 2 together, knit 1. The edges, the garter stitch edges, are going to go from 14 stitches to 6 stitches, I think. I take that back. Yes, 6 stitches. So if you skip down below row 8, it says repeat these last 8 rounds for the decrease segment 7 times more. And there are half, so 6 stitches between the markers in the garter side gussets. And it'll be 12 inches from the beginning. So you repeat the decrease row until you have 6 stitches in that garter stitch gusset. Then you separate for the armhole. So it says slip the first 6 stitches to waste yarn and remove marker. Well, remember we have half of the stitches. So it'll be 2 or 3 stitches to waste yarn. Take out your marker. Then it says cast on 1 stitch. So they're having you cast on an edge stitch for the seaming for the sleeve. Knit the next 125 stitches, remove your marker, cast on 1 stitch. And so you're knitting, it's not 125, it's half of that, it's the needle bed. Cast on 1 stitch and leave the remaining, well, we don't have, there are no remaining, we've done the whole row. Work on those 127 stitches, 4 back, working the pattern stitch in rows. We've already been working rows, so we're just now going to knit as follows. So it says turn, well, your carriage is on the, what that means is you're turning and going back instead of around. Our carriage is already in place, and we're starting with the wrong side, row 2 of the pattern stitch, and you work back and forth until your armhole is the length you need it. So that's where the math comes in. You need to know your row gauge, number 1, to make sure that your 12 inches is from, you know, from side bottom to, and that includes your 2-inch garter band, because it's 12 inches from the beginning. So you're going to knit 10 inches, and then I'm going to knit 10.5 inches because I have big arms. Then you do your neck and shoulder shaping. So from here, I'm going to do another video for the neck and shoulder shaping, because they have you bind off. Do we want to bind off, or do we want a short row shape? You know what, this is silk, let's bind off. So we're going to follow this pattern just as it is, but what I'm going to do is download Knitting Anyways. They have a check sheet, and draw in my decreases, because you're binding off here and decreasing here. So binding off, decrease, bind off, decrease, bind off, decrease. You need to kind of keep track of where you're at, because you're going to do this shoulder and then do this shoulder and then repeat for the back. So I'm going to, I'll put the link in the description of the class and show you how, you know, I'll fill out the sheet, so you can either print it and fill it out yourself or use my cheat sheet. And then repeat for the front. Seems like a no-brainer, right? Except it's 78 in here. And I just came off the lake. Happy July 2020. If you have any questions, I would be glad to take them. Let me see if how I can turn this on. I can't. Okay, so questions, please put them in the Porch Talk question and answer area for the knit along, and I'll be glad to come back and answer them. Thanks for joining me.